Hey everybody, it's Prince's Friend, and this week is Purple Rain Week, where we are doing reviews of the album, of the movie, and posting up a listening party for Purple Rain. I'm really excited for this week, doing the reviews for Purple Rain, which was most notably the biggest Prince event in all of his career. So the movie was actually released in July of 1984, whereas the album was released the month before in June, so everybody got to experience the music and then got to watch the movie and see how everything did. So that's why the movie review is coming after the album review. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to focus mostly on the movie itself and not really talk that much about the music because that was obviously in the review that was yesterday. So today, though, we are going to be discussing the movie. So now, Purple Rain the movie stars Prince, Apollonia Cotero, Morris Day, and the Revolution, Prince's band. It also starred Olga Karlatos, who played his mom, and Clarence Williams III, who played his dad. Of course, Clarence Williams III you see in tons of stuff. I haven't really seen Olga in anything else, but like every time I see Clarence Williams III, I'm always just like, "That's Prince's dad," but because he still acts, he still does a lot of stuff. It was directed by Albert Maglone, who also wrote it along with William Blinn. Now, Albert Maglone, this is pretty much the biggest movie that he's done. I actually went and looked, and he did a couple of other like smaller projects, but this is pretty much the movie that he did. I want to talk a little bit about how the movie came to be first. Prince wrote it into his contract that he would get a movie. And while most people assumed that it would probably be your standard concert movie, he said, "Oh no, I want to star in an actual movie." And it crosses the line of a musical and a concert movie, really not falling easily into either of the two categories. Like most of what Prince did, it doesn't fit with what people expect, and that's why he's awesome. It's said that the movie is loosely based on Prince's life, and it was supposed to be actually a lot darker in the original scripts, but the script got, the Hollywood treatment to make it more entertaining and not as bleak as the original was. The movie made $68.4 million in the box office, and it cost $7.2 million to make, and it only took 10 weeks to film it. So even from just the studio standpoint, it's an astounding success. What all that delivered was basically a stunning movie, both musically and visually, and it's the movie that I watch whenever I'm sick at home. A lot of my friends do Star Wars, or a couple of my friends do The Matrix. But whenever I'm home alone and I'm just like, sick and I can't work and I'm just laying there vegging out, I throw Purple Rain on. Either that or Graffiti Bridge, one of the two. But I just throw some Prince on. And it just like comforts me in like a way that nothing else does. And what this movie allowed him to do was cross over from sexy singer to a true worldwide stardom, taking over the mainstream with the Purple Rain movie and accompanying album that sold over 25 million copies worldwide. So Purple Rain does a really good job introducing all the major players during the first song of the movie, which is Let's Go Crazy. First off, the song establishes what kind of music Prince, as the kid, is into. It's uplifting music. It's laced with hints of God and spirituality. Then comes in Morris Day and Jerome, and his manservant, who just can't wait to get up on stage and one-up him with superficial dance music, which is also awesome. Jungle Love, come on. Just a note, of course, that none of the time's music is actually included on the soundtrack for the album because they wanted to shift those sales over to Ice Cream Castle, which was the Times album, which was also out parallel to Purple Rain. So they wanted to shift those sales because they knew people were going to love the time in the movie. Apollonia, the romantic interest, is also introduced as someone who's willing to do just about anything to get her shot, and she's like desperate for it. And you really get a really good sense of those major players right up front. So they did an amazing job with that in the movie. Purple Rain then wastes no time in establishing the plot too. The kid's brand of music isn't good for business, and Morris has a plan to get rid of the kid once and for all, start a girl group with huge commercial appeal, and get the kid kicked out of First Avenue. And of course, his choice to head up this group is Apollonia, who is the kid's new love interest, who he seduces with a sexy motorcycle ride. So I wish the movie had given us a little bit more motivation for its actions, personally, because really it just kind of seems like Morris Day is a prick. There has to be more underneath that character. Like, I realize, like, that's the kind of character that Morris Day is. But still, like, there's at least a scene at the end where he makes a joke about the kid's dad, um, that even he, like, takes a moment to be like, damn, I am really a dick. You know, and it's just that sort of thing. It's just like, it was good of them to include that moment at the end where he seemed to have a humanizing, scene there where, he really, like, he knew that he was being an ass. But at the same time, they still never really gave us any real reason to believe that he would have this visceral of a hatred for the kid. So it's my hang up with the movie, obviously. There's also a really quick introduction of the B plot of the movie, which is the fight with his band. The fight is because he's so used to doing everything himself, and he doesn't allow his band to really help. He doesn't play any of the music that his band wants to play. It's everything that he wants to do. I really think it's a reflection of what was really going on in the Revolution. Purple Rain was, of course, the first time that the band was actually featured, and it wasn't just Prince doing everything himself. Again, he only wrote 3 of the songs on the album, and everything else was very collaborative between himself and the rest of the Revolution. It was no longer Prince, it was Prince and the Revolution, and that's such a big deal for this movie and for where his career was headed. There are some funny moments in the movie, as well as some intensely dramatic moments. Most of the funnier moments come from Morris Day and Jerome, because they're kind of the comic relief, as well as the antagonists, which doesn't normally happen in movies. But again, this is a movie that defies tradition in what it does. Their who's on first routine with what's the password. It's like it's so awesome. There's also the keep the change line, followed by the would you go give me my change? It's like there's a lot of really good lines in this. The drama mostly comes from the parallel tension between Kid's mom and dad, and Kid and Apollonia. Since both relationships are rife with jealousy and controlling behavior, and not in like a nice, fun way where like ooh, you're jealous of me, so I get off on it. No, it's like it's almost hard to root for this relationship to continue because it is so uncomfortable to see you two interact with each other. Like, you have your good moments, but most of your moments are really terrible, and you guys are not good to each other. And it's just one of those things. Like, they'd really be better off just cutting ties and just being with somebody else entirely. But the kid accepts help from his band after a tragic experience, and he delivers the performance that he needs to keep his job. He even got Morris Day and Jerome to dance at the end, which was a great shot of the movie where they were like, yeah. Looking at the cinematography and the sound a little bit, it's kind of a weird juxtaposition of kind of a gritty movie, and it's kind of dark, but there's a lot of kind of bright colors, and there's a lot of really good imagery. Interesting angles where they got the camera shots in different angles. One of the most prominent is where he's leaving the club and he's going down the fire escape, and the camera's kind of underneath him, and it's just a weird shot where he's doing that, and then Apollonia kind of creeps out of the shadows, and it's just like, why were you waiting in the shadows? Like that's like an alley behind a music club. Why don't you like wait like outside front where all the people are, or why don't you wait, inside? Like I don't get it. Makes sense, really, though, because a lot of the movie takes place in First Avenue, the club where everybody works, where it's dark, and it's kind of like that's where all the tension is. And then when they're not there, it's actually really it's always sunny outside. It's always really nice and bright in all of the other locations. But I think that that's on purpose. That First Avenue is always like very dark and very foreboding, and that's where a lot of like the nasty stuff actually ends up going down. I think it matches the overall tone of the movie, which is dark, but still not as dark as the original script had wanted it to be. So while the soundtrack is undoubtedly wonderful, the sound mixing of the audio in the movie itself isn't really all that great. Many of the voices are immutable, as the actors like whisper a lot of their lines, and it's just like, what did he say? There's a lot of that in there, and there are also several spots where it's obvious that the characters needed to dub over their own voices in order to make it clearer what they were saying. There's even one shot where Morse Day does it, and it's so obvious because the voice doesn't even line up with the words.
This just ain't happening, man. The bitches are okay, but we need something more exciting.
You're right. We could be doing much better. Any ideas?
That Apollonia babe we saw last night.
But obviously the music is the star. That's obvious. Nobody's arguing that. From an acting standpoint, though, I think Prince did a decent job as the kid. It's not a terribly deep role, and the character himself is mostly reactionary, but Prince really knows how to emote, which I think is his biggest advantage. He's able to kind of stand there and give a look, and you know what he's thinking, and I think he does a really good job with that sort of thing. But honestly, the kid himself is not actually a likable character. I believe he's supposed to be like a flawed hero, but to me, he's actually much worse. Like, he physically abuses his girlfriend because he comes from an abusive background. He shits all over his band because he's an egomaniac. He even plagiarizes his father, which isn't something that a lot of people pick up on. But there's a scene where he has a talk with his father while his father is playing on the piano, and he's basically playing the melody to Computer Blue. He says, "Is that yours?" And he says, "Of course it's mine." And the very next scene is the kid playing his father's music on stage on Computer Blue, which the movie has already established that the kid is a genius and he can listen to any music and completely replicate it. He did it with Purple Rain, and he did it with a bunch of the other things in the movie. But, from that standpoint, he basically took his father's song and made it his, and he plagiarized it, and he's a dick for that. It's kind of weird, because the end of the movie kind of addresses the fact that he and his bandmates are kind of, better with each other, because he plays Purple Rain, which Wendy and Lisa had written. They don't really solidify that, but they kind of give, a nod to each other, it's cool, I'm gonna let you do some of the music now. I get it now. There's a scene where his mom goes and visits his dad in the hospital, which is, to say, obviously, his father did not die in the movie, even though the original script did have him dying. And there's also where, they're blowing kisses to each other while he's performing on stage, him and Apollonia, and they're smiling at each other and saying, hey, I think we should, it's kind of like that, I think we're back together, and I think we're happy for each other, and it's awesome. But it's weird because nothing really tells us that he's a changed man. He had this terrible moment in his life which made him write a very moving song with the help of his band, but that's nothing to say that he's going to treat Apollonia better. That's not to say that if his father recovers, that his relationship with his mom is going to be any better. He still has all this deep-rooted hatred and anger inside of himself, and the movie doesn't really address any of that. It more is, I'm able to use this terrible moment in my life to produce some beautiful art, and I'm probably going to get very famous from it. And it ends with him, moving the crowd, and the crowd is completely behind him, which kind of, solidifies that fact. But I think the kid is still pretty terrible as like a person. So I don't know. That may be me reading too much into it. Maybe it's supposed to be the big happy ending at the end where everything is hunky dory, but I would like to see what happens the day after that. Like his dad might get out of the hospital because he shot himself in the frickin' head. He might be like a vegetable, and his mom ends up having to care for him for the rest of his life as a vegetable. Or maybe she doesn't. Maybe she says, "This is my moment where I can leave and never have to deal with this shit ever again." Like there's so many different things that were kind of just left there, where it's just, you know, the music is amazing. That's basically what I could say. The music is amazing in this movie. Morris Day acting is really, really good at being Morris Day. So there's no reason to believe that he would do a bad job here. And I think he delivered pretty much like super solidly on every scene that Morris had. I think Morris stole most of the scenes that he was in, except for every scene, except that Jerome was also really, really awesome. I think Apollonia's performance was passable. She wasn't a great actress. I think I would have really liked to have seen what this movie would have been like with Vanity in that role, which she was supposed to be in that role originally. Because if you see her acting in The Last Dragon, which was, I think that's really the only movie that I've ever seen her in, she did a good job playing the love interest in that movie. I think she would have delivered the same kind of awesomeness here, and I think it would have made for, I think, a better love interest, a better love story in the movie. I mean, I think we all enjoyed the Lake Minnetonka scene with Apollonia, though. So surprisingly for me, Jill Jones actually delivered all of her lines flawlessly. Her crying was great. Like, I think she should have gotten into acting more because she did an amazing job. Big props to Jill Jones. So, in conclusion, I think in the end, Purple Rain is a magical musical journey of Prince's design. There's a reason why it's the thing that he's associated with, like most, over even more than everything else that he did in his over 30-year career. It's an 111-minute movie chock full of 80s nostalgia, and wonderful music that you can't get out of your head. One of the best soundtracks of any movie ever. As a movie, though, I think it would probably get, I'd give it a, 3 stars out of 5. It has a bunch of things that could have definitely been better, but it's definitely not a bad movie. But when you throw in that music, oh, it's 5-star experience, like, hands down. So what did you think of Purple Rain? Did you have a favorite scene? Let's talk about it in the comments and continue the conversation. If you liked this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and may you live to see the dawn.